Everybody to our in our continuing series of the COVID-19 related chats going on here, put on by the Commission for Libraries, facilitated, I should say. We are talking today with everybody's favorite state data coordinator, Patrick, about how do people feel? How are stats going to be impacted, and how will we count things during this unprecedented time we are going through? So I'm filling in for Dina, who often facilitates these things. But if you're having any technical issues, just wondering why Zoom is not behaving itself, feel free to put something in the chat, and I will attempt to help you resolve that. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Patrick.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This presentation, or I guess chat, is really going to be more of that, a chat, because even today, the state data coordinator listserv that I get to be a part of and you are all jealous of is blowing up with virtual programs and attendance and how do we count them and do we want them separate. And the thinking that I have, and the thinking that in speaking with Tammany and Stephanie and others at the commission, is that we understand, first of all, we're lucky because there are other states where your statistics or whatever are tied to funding, right? And we don't have funding. You are going to be eligible for grants from us anyway. You're going to be eligible for all of our services and programs, so nothing matters other than an accurate story about what is going on and what will have happened this year. And so in thinking of that, we're going to, obviously there's going to be new questions on the annual report for this next year that are going to tie into this COVID. We haven't worked with our vendor yet. It's too early, I guess, to try and figure out if it'll be a whole new COVID section or if we'll try and tie them in so for example, where the program's at, if we add virtual programming to that section. But there will be new sections. My goal today, and what I wanted to have happen today, was kind of walk you through the new questions that I see and how exactly we would count those and things that would remain the same. And then I really want to know what else you all are doing while business is not as usual, that you would like to see counted at a national level. None of these are going to be federal level questions, meaning that we're not going to pass any of these on to IMLS. This is just statewide, so things that you would want to see compared to other libraries in Idaho, or how it is affecting our Idaho libraries there. So the things that I thought of off the top of my head that libraries were doing when I first sat was, we all were closed and shut down for a period of time. Some of us will have been closed for longer, right? Curbside pickup is a big thing that people are talking about. And then people have switched to online or virtual programming. And so I'm going to walk through those kind of three different things right there. And then please either in the chat or unmute yourself. I'd love to go through and have people tell me what else they're doing that's COVID related that is different than normal that you would like to see compared. So that's the plan. That first one, home delivery. Perfect. Note of that. Okay, so the first one is going to be super simple. We just want to know how many weeks you were closed. Some people were only closed during the governor's mandatory shutdown. Some people are still closed. Some people closed before he mandated it. And so at the end, those of you who are directors and are familiar with the survey, there's that section, the outlet section, where you go through each location and talk about the hours and that specific contact location. There's also a question that says weeks this library was open. That will still be there because that one is a federal question. But in order to help people kind of think about it, we are also thinking that we want to see this. How many weeks were you closed for COVID? The way that would be measured is the same as weeks open. So if right now if you are open for more than half of your regularly scheduled hours during that week. So, for example, the Island Park branch of Fremont County Library, they are usually closed on Thursdays and Fridays. But that means in Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving time, they're closed for those Thursdays and Fridays. They don't have to try and balance that out or figure that out if they're closed that time. So if they still were open for the 15 or 20 hours a week that they normally are, obviously they're open that week. If they are open for only 15 of the 20 still. So anytime. Great question. So, and Stephanie, that is closed to the public. So that's what we're looking at right there. At least my understanding. Do you all see value in keeping those separate? I'm seeing no's. I'm seeing. Okay. So yeah, closed to the public, just like open to the public, open hours is what we're looking at when you report your hours. Even though there's staff or people who are working behind the scenes at the library before the libraries are open, we don't count the 8 to 9 or whatever it is. The staff's there. We count hours open to the public. We would count weeks closed to the public or weeks closed to to the public that way. So that's what we're looking at for COVID-19. Megan's asking, so limited services still count as open as long as you have some hours the public can come in? If they can come into your building, yes.
Okay, so they're walking in, even if all they can do is get holds, we're open.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is that right there. The second one that I wanted to hit, making a note because you just reminded me of something I didn't write, is the curbside pickup. That is something that a lot of libraries are doing. The first question in that little section would be, did you offer curbside pickup? And if the answer is no, then you can skip all of the others, right? So yes, Jennifer, no entry, only curbside counts as closed if they can't come in through the door. That goes along with, I had a question, I think it was from Alice Kelly earlier this week about counting curbside pickup as visits. Since the count for visits is a federal definition that federally they've agreed upon, it is counted as people that walk through your doors. Curbside, you wouldn't count them as library visits because they're not walking through the doors right there. So what we want to do again, curbside visits, yes or no? And if yes, remember that those circulations still are going to count as your circulation. So just because it's happening outside the door, I like to think of it as bookmobile circulation or main branch circulation. It's still circulation no matter where it happens. If it's homebound delivery, it's still going to be circulation. You're circulating those items out to people that way. But since we're not counting visitors, since they're not walking through the door, something that we would like to see reflected if you are doing curbside and starting now, or starting if you have been doing, or if whatever, since we didn't tell you, is the number of pickups, or the number of people, vehicles, I guess. You're not gonna open their windows and count how many people are in the car, but each vehicle or each pickup that you have, the number of pickups. I am not planning on separating curbside circulation from regular circulation. I think, and you all can tell me if I'm off base on this, but I think by counting the number of pickups, we will see that story told, that people are still using the library in that different way as opposed to checking out items in that different way. The question from Katie, would curbside be outreach? No, we currently don't ask for any outreach stats, is the reason why I'd say no. So you obviously can track outreach, track the number of visits. It's just not something that you report to us. But my view of outreach is more you're going out and you're sharing about the programs, or you're talking about library services, or you're at the county fair signing people up for library cards or whatever, where curbside people are coming to you. So they're separate enough that I don't consider them to be outreach. Does that make sense? Seeing some nodding. Okay. So number of pickups, your circulation still counts, and they're not visits because they're not coming through the library door. So that was that one. And now everyone's favorite is the virtual programming. That's where I've seen a lot of people step up and still provide those programs that they can. I know there are people that are doing their summer reading program entirely virtually this summer, right? And so this is going to be, like we mentioned earlier, it's still programming, but because we want to tell the story of how COVID-19 affected us all, we don't want to roll virtual programs at this point into the programming numbers that you've normally been counting, right? What we don't want to see is that, okay, normally we do one story time a week, and we've been closed for 15 weeks, but we put an online story time every week. And so all of our funders or the legislature says, well, look, they were closed 15 weeks and there's absolutely no impact on the programming. So the libraries don't need 15 extra weeks worth of funding because they can do it all virtually. We want to show an accurate story of what exactly happened. So with that in mind, and this is something that a few people have reached out to me on, in my view, there's really three kinds of programming that we've got going on. Two of them are virtual and one is the physical programming. So during this annual report, remembering it's going to be October 19th through September of this year, you will have some kind of physical programs that you've done. You will have had your story times or your book clubs or your knitting club or whatever it is that you've got going on. You're still going to track those the same way that you have. Right now we have the 4 different kinds of programs based on the primary audience. There's children's, young adult, adult programs, and then all ages, that family programming, where you count the number of programs, and then you have the attendance at those programs. So attendance at children's programs, attendance at young adult, attendance at adult, and attendance at all ages. Keeping in mind that the age of the people in the room isn't what you're keeping track of, it's the age of the attendance. So story time, the example we always give, mom comes with her teenage daughter and 3 preschoolers. That is 5 for the program attendance at one program. You don't have to break them up by ages. Someone always tries to make it more complicated than they have to. Please don't complicate it. Just count the number of people right there. So we've got physical, but then we've also got the virtual programs right there. And virtual programming, what I've seen, and this is where you all can tell me if I'm wrong, virtual programming is happening in 2 different ways. There's the live streams where people are broadcasting on Facebook Live or whatever platform, and people are viewing it as it happens. And then there are recorded streams where maybe you're recording, reading the story time. We'll use story time as the example, and then posting it to your website or posting it to YouTube or posting it to your Google Drive that people can then download and view it at their leisure, right? So those are the 2 kinds of virtual story times or virtual programmings that I've seen. What we would do then is, thinking of how the questions would be formed, is did you offer virtual programs that were live or virtual programs that were recorded? Do you all see value in breaking those up by age groups as well? Or is it hard enough to track, hey, we've just been doing virtual, that that's what you would want to do?
I don't think it's any different. You're still thinking about who the intended audience is, right? So
yeah.
I mean, you don't know who's viewing it, but you do know who you made it for. So I don't think that it's any different. I think you could still we're still breaking it down. We're using our exact same stats form, but we just added in a question about what type of virtual program it is. So hopefully that's sufficient.
Yeah. Okay. So my only thinking was burden of time on the survey, right? You're answering 4 questions or 1 question, right? If you break it down by age group, then it's 4. If you're just answering the 1, then it's the 1. It's really what you all feel is going to be of the most value to you, right? And so for me, it's going to be what's useful to you. And Megan, we will get to your comment in the chat because that's what we're going to talk about as well. So when it is live, you're going to look at the number of viewers or the number of whatever. So right now, if we were counting this as a virtual program, I would look down and I'd say, okay, there's 14 participants minus me because I'm presenting, minus Dylan because he's awesome but doesn't count. So we would count one virtual program with an attendance of 12, right? Other people have asked me and have said, okay, so do I need to look into the screen and say, okay, there's someone behind Katie, is she really paying attention? And so there's 2 people in that screen and Annie's dog shows up, so that's 1 extra. And no, just count the participants. You don't need to count how many family members are in the screen as you do that. Just do the live attendees. Don't worry about counting people in the screen. If you do the view, if you do it recorded, and then I'll get to you, Jen. So if you do the recorded and the number of views or number of plays on that, it's going to be just what that is. So you're not going to say, okay, we've posted this on our website. If you take it down, obviously get the views before it's deleted. And if you leave it up, remember that you want to get those numbers as of September 30th so that next year's views before the report come out aren't counted onto this year's annual report. So Megan brought up that she has, and libraries are doing this. If I'm understanding correctly, yell at me if I'm wrong, but you did a live video and then you posted it online and so people could come back and watch it later, similar to how we're doing now.
Right, so we're counting it as the same program, like we're not entering a different number, like we're not saying it's 2 different programs, but we are counting the stats for both, right? So like the number of live people now, and then if you showed this later and got the views on YouTube, we're adding that to the program total. I was told you said we could do that, so if not, then...
Yes, okay. No. That is what I was gonna say, is that you would count it as that live program if there are attendees, and then just add the views to that attendees view. If there are no attendees, you're doing it live and no one shows up, make yourself look better, put it as a recorded program, and then do that. We're gonna get the same amount of views total, which is what we're saying. The story that I see important that we want to tell is engagement with your virtual programs, right? And so whether they're engaging live or they're engaging later, we could break up if you all see value in that. But again, it's that burden of, okay, well, I took my tally of 5 right here. I can't double count my program, so there has to be a separate live then recorded or live then posted category for those programs. And so I think the story is being told. I think that what we want to hear is what has been happening, and that's the way to get that done. Does that make sense? Okay, looks good. Jen, are you talking about just website visits or online links, or what are you looking at?
Well, I think like on our website, we haven't posted anything that we've necessarily done or recorded, but we posted like links from Lily or different, like when stars have read a storybook or different things already published, not necessarily ours, links to activities, links to ebooks, links to story times, that kind of stuff. Is there any way to track? How do we know if anybody's even looking at it, or if our website has seen an increase in visits during this time or not.
I am proud to say I don't know if Annie or Dylan want to jump in and tell me one way or the other, but I'm happy to reach out to Doug and see if there's engagement numbers we can get.
I'm pretty sure if you have an eBranch site, I'm pretty sure Doug should be able to get you those kind of numbers. And if you don't have an eBranch site, but you're running your own website, if you do something like Google Analytics or something for those folks, that should be able to get you those kind of numbers as well. But if you do an eBranch site, we can get those numbers from Doug.
Perfect. That makes me feel happy that my answer was I'll check with Doug, and Dylan's answer was I'll check with Doug too. So I'm happy to push the answers off onto Doug as well. The other question, so Stephanie is asking, how would you count grab and go activity bags for summer reading? Physical only, and that they'll pick it up. Would it be outreach? You can count that however you want, because we're not adding it to the annual report at this point. So keep track, brag to your library board. Great question, and not something that you're passing on to us. And Julie or Burley, are you talking about the summer reading responses for summer reading programs?
So if we're doing STEM kits and they take them home, and finish it and take a picture or a video and send it to us as a completion of getting a prize, can we count that, or is that a no?
So that wouldn't count as a program, much the same way that we aren't counting what's called passive programs, or like if you have a puzzle set up or a Lego table or something like that. It's a program, it's a STEM something, kids are engaging with it. But currently we don't collect those passive programs. And so for those, keep track of it for yourself. That's absolutely good. And there's always conversations at the federal level of should we add these passive programming on too, so we can tell this story as well. But for right now, we aren't collecting it. It would, if it does come down the line, then you would be in good practice and already know what you're doing. And if it doesn't, then you still have a story that you can tell your city council or your library board and brag about how awesome you are. Look how many kids are participating in our stuff that we're doing. The other question was home delivery that was mentioned earlier. That's something that people have been doing before COVID. Is that something?
Yeah, so we're not doing curbside. We're taking the items to them instead. So I mean, lots of libraries have done it in terms of like for homebound patrons. We're just doing it as a general service as an alternative to curbside. So obviously it'll show in the CIRC, but I would also think we'd want to show like similar with how many vehicles, how many households.
Gotcha. I'm inclined to say that we would count those the same way. But I'm going to have to check with some other SDCs and see if they feel the same or not. Because even though it's not passed on at a federal level, we do want to kind of make sure we're all counting these the same way in case it does become federal for the next year. Jen's question, so if I hand out 5 grab-and-go activity bags each week to my regular attendees in place of story time, you're not reporting activities as it is, to me anyway. So count them as an activity for you, that's fine, but we're not counting activities that are completed, right? So what else? That was kind of my list right there. Added home delivery to check on and website engagement, for sure to bug Doug about, but what else do people have?
So I guess I'm confused. These won't count as any kind of program stats if our program, if our summer reading program is out, if we're going to places and that's what we're doing is handing out kits, that's not going to count as a program?
So if it is the same as your normal summer reading, if your summer reading is going in full swing, then yes, that counts as your regular programming, but that would not be counted as the virtual programs like we've talked about. It would be just your regular programming numbers, like the story times that were happening in December kind of thing, right? But it's these, so it's these different kind of things that we're trying to keep track of what happened during shutdown. Or continued on. If you keep going with the virtual programming, for example, and you hadn't been doing it before, we'll obviously keep track of that.
Patrick, our grab and go is replacing story time. It is replacing our maker activity. So it is our program.
Gotcha. Okay. So that was misunderstanding on my part at the beginning there. So if it is, so if it still would fit into that, I think the best way that we can do it, and someone chime in if you think different, do we need to add that other category since it's replacing your physical programs, that we do just a take and go kind of question to show that that's what's happening, as opposed to it's not virtual, right? And it's not story time in place, it's kind of a replacement. Should we add that part too? Just a take and go programming?
I think so.
You could, if there is like somebody indicated that they're having somebody, like they're having them email, or like some proof of what they're doing, then you could. Otherwise, it's really no different than checking out a kit. If there's not some indication that they finished it, then it doesn't, but I know what you're saying. It doesn't count as the definition of a program of what we have to record because it's not facilitated by staff. They might make the kit, but they're not teaching them how to do it. They're not facilitating it. And it is a passive program. That's all people can do right now, which I get. It's still amazing, but I don't think it meets the definition of stats of what they want for programs. But also with summer reading, that's normally not considered a program stat, right? Because the whole thing is a passive program. So like that's been my understanding, is we can't take our summer reading participants and add them to our program stats. We're not supposed to be. We could take those that come to a story time during summer reading and add them to our program stats. So I think if you're going to add another question, then certainly it could be something about take and go programs. That might be like the easiest way to track that if people are doing that.
You're absolutely right. Sorry, I'm taking a note on this, but you're absolutely right that your summer reading signups shouldn't count as a program or as participants or attendees or anything like that. Every week if you have a summer reading activity, or at the end of summer reading you work with the fire department and they come hose down the kids in the park, right? That is a program. The attendees count for that activity. It's a physical in place there. In years past that would have counted, absolutely, but you're not counting, okay, we had 5,000 people sign up for summer reading, so that's 5,000 attendees at one program. Or as Megan said, you shouldn't be counting that right there. Jen asked a question about circulation, and she's on the phone, so I will wait until she's off the phone and answer that so she can hear it. But any more thoughts on should we add that question? Should we just make it a take and go in addition to virtual programming?
I think it's a model a lot of libraries are using, so it would probably be helpful for them, even if they're just tracking how many they're handing out. Everybody will probably have that number if they're doing that model. So I think it would be useful for them to look at, and I'm sure most libraries are tracking that already if they're going to be doing it, of how many they hand out each week.
And we would treat it just like we do with virtual programming, or, if you didn't do it, just write an NA. So it's not going to be required. It's not going to be something that you can't, if you don't put a number in that because you didn't do it, or if you didn't do virtual programming and you don't put in a number, you'll still be able to submit. Jennifer, you're back. So I wanted to answer the circulation renewals thing. I hate circulation numbers because circulation is a fuzzy number anyway. Some people already automatically renew. Some people, and the definition says to count your renewals. So you're going to count those anyway. But one of the reasons it's fuzzy is some people have 2 weeks checkouts, and some people have 3, and some people have 4. And so if you're renewing something indefinitely, that's a 2-week checkout for 2 months, that's 4 circulations. And if you just renew it once and it's a 4-week checkout, well, then it's only 2 circulations. And it really just depends on the library and the policy right there. And Kate feels the same way. I love it. And so it is what it is. Since it's federal, we're going to just keep counting, you know. That's why we ask that question, so that people can see. We do ask, if you remember or have seen, how long is this circulation period? Normally 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4, whatever people have put in, so they can kind of see how that goes that way. But realistically, it's one of the fuzzier numbers because of the difference in items. And some libraries have different checkout periods for different items, right? Your new movies are for 5 days, but regular movies are for 2 weeks, and your children's books are for 2 weeks, and new materials are only for a week, and then, you know, you can come and get your kits for 3 weeks at a time. It's different even within the same library or same system. So you are correct. Not accurate, but it is what it is, and that's what they want. So we're going to make them happy and do that.
I can't remember what you normally ask about Wi-Fi on the state report, but I don't know if you wanted to consider asking if libraries adjusted their Wi-Fi, turned it off, turned it up, you know, brought it out of the building.
All that we ask is the Wi-Fi, how many uses of the library's wireless network, and then the internet connection speed for Dylan at the end there. I blame Dylan, but he's the one who uses that number more than anyone else. So connection type and connection speed at the location level. And then wireless uses, we don't do location based. We do system-wide wireless uses that way. So yeah, Wi-Fi increase.
And I think you asked sessions. I think that's the terminology.
Yeah.
Is sessions.
Which again makes it super fuzzy because, you know, Linda, is your session 4 hours and Megan, yours is 2, and then they have to renew, and it is what it is. It's the same as computer sessions. Some people have 30 minutes, some people have indefinite. It's just what it is.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. This helps a lot.
Good.
Bye.